Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, Chad Robert Morgan, and let's get started. First of all, we got a lot of big releases coming out in May. Okay, let's start with friend of the show, Jennifer Milne. She's coming out with heartwarming horror. According to this, the book will take your breath away in more ways than one. The realization that without context, the plot of a heartwarming romantic comedy could just as easily be a horrifying horror film. Yeah, I believe she said that's coming out this May, so look forward to that. Remember, Jennifer Milne won our Book of the Year for last year, and that was some pretty stiff competition there. So I'm really confident in her writing abilities, and the fact that she's kind of getting into a little bit of horror kind of thing is very interesting. On top of that, we've talked about this book before, but May's coming up. May is the month that Aaron Lewis's book, There's No Grave Like Home, dig that title, is going to come out. So again, Aaron Lewis also won Book of the Year for her collection of short stories. In this book, Georgia never apologized for leaving her rural hometown as a teenager to become a stripper. Now, in her mid-40s, she finds her career prospers dwindling, as younger women are willing to break the club rules to compete for every dollar. When her estranged, widowed father dies, Georgia is forced to move back to the childhood home she had inherited, where the locals haven't forgotten her inability to fit in and immoral career choices. But when Georgia discovers the dark secret that the house has been hiding, she begins to wonder who her dad really was. And she's running out of time to determine which of her judgmental neighbors wants her dead. So, if you don't know, Aaron Lewis is a former stripper. Her book, Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners, was very heavily autobiographical. There were some fictional short stories in there as well, which I really dug because then I got to see a bit of her creative chops in that book as well. Like, she also has the book Stripper Noir, about I believe that one's a stripper that's also a serial killer that's being hunted. There's a couple other books. So there is that little bit of a theme in her books because as a former stripper herself, she's writing what she knows. So that tends to really add a bit of authenticity and realism to her books. So I would totally recommend checking that one out. Again, as a past award winner, Aaron Lewis is excellent. Lastly, also coming out in May, friend of the show, Raven Belasco, is coming out with book 4 of her Blood Eternal series. If you don't remember, we reviewed Blood Ex Libris, which is the first book in the series. The audiobook is being worked on and is being performed by Buffy the Vampire Slayer alum Amber Benson, who has done the other 3 audiobooks. So definitely take a look at that, especially if you like. I know the first vampire book, the first half of it was very spicy. But then it went from there to like vampire politics and vampire on vampire violence and everything like that. It's a pretty cool book. Definitely check that out. Check out the series. If you like it, work your way up to book 4, because book 4 is coming out in May. So that's all the press releases I have so far. Remember, if you are a past showcase-e, is that a word? If you have been showcased on the podcast anywhere in its existence, we're going on our 3rd year of doing this, and you have a book release coming out, or you have a convention coming up, or a book signing, whatever, let me know. We will plug it here on the show. You have free PR for life if you have ever been showcased on the podcast. So the next thing I want to talk about is I started doing book recs up on the Instagram and the TikTok pages there. Can I make it sound any more boomerish? I put it there on the TikToks. I started getting these on my feed, book recs, and I'm like, hey, I've read quite a few books in various categories. I could do this too. Let's plug some of our showcases. Let's get a little bit more exposure to them. And I started thinking up different categories, like, hey, vampire books. I've actually read quite a few vampire books. Let's do best of vampire books as an example. And I will continue to do those. I'm trying to do one a week. I didn't do one last week. I got busy. But I'm trying to do that in different categories so I can spread things out. And then if it's a category one of my books actually fits into, I sneak that in at the end to get a little self-love. But if one I want to do is like based on true stories kind of thing, autobiographical, because I got about 3 from the show that I can recommend. I don't have any that counts at that, so none of my books would be on that list. But, there you go. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, again, the AI paranoia has creeped in. I posted a list of best of vampire books. And somebody had the comment on the TikTok that, it's a shame that these indie authors are using AI images on their book covers. So let's go through it. Okay, first off, we have Scott Harper's Lethal Lords and Ladies of the Night. This is not just the book cover. This has got beautiful illustrations throughout the book. It's one of the reasons I bought it, actually, because I saw that and I was like, this is so gorgeous. I definitely want this. And it took me years to get around to actually reading it because I was so busy. And I'm glad I finally did get around to reading it because it is a really good book. This is actually a collection of short stories that Scott Harper has published in various magazines that got all collected. Now, Scott actually is not independent publisher, or is not an independent publisher. He does work with a small press, which again, the Indie Author Showcase, you're either independent or small press. And I think Scott does do some independent stuff, but this is actually printed by a small press company called Sinister Smile Press. Now, I looked through the book to try to find any credits for the illustrator. I could not find any. So to kind of prove that our friend Scott and his publisher did not use AI, I started doing a little digging. And I said, what is the earliest AI image out there? Turned out that was done in 1970. 1974, I believe, to be exact. (1973), sorry. So that didn't help. So I did a little more research. I said, okay, when was the first publicly available AI art generation? And that would be Dolly in 2021. Then we get into Stable Diffusion and Midjourney in 2022. So AI imagery was at its infancy when this book was published in 2023. Now, could AI do these images today? I'm pretty confident that it could. Some of these are really good, though. Like that one? Okay, maybe. But where was that one with the... I would be hard-pressed, however. So, like, this one's really good. I don't know how well AI would do that, to be honest. But, again, the question is, can AI do it today? Probably. Could it do it in 2023 when this book was published? I would say, and you can tell me I'm wrong, that Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, that was all still very new. and getting it to this quality would have been a pretty remarkable feat, I think. Now again, AI has exploded since then. You could totally do it today, but this book wasn't published today. It was published in 2023. So the thing that this was AI generated art, I think, unless I got evidence to the contrary, I'm going to say no. So let's talk about Dicey Grinner's book. We posted Dicey Grinner's book, the Narcoleptic Vampire series, book 1. And the woman on the cover is actually a model. We've talked about this. I've interviewed Dicey before. We've talked about her doing trade shows and inviting the model to come with us, or come with her, not with us, with her, to be in the booth and everything like that. That is a real person named Jace Baptiste. And she's on the cover of all of her Sleepy Willow books from the entire series. So that's a real person. That's not AI generated. That is a real flesh and blood person that you can actually meet in person at some of these conventions. So we can debunk that one. Let's go on to Raven Belasco's book that we just talked about, Blood Ex Libris. Can we just admit this is like the least AI looking book cover in the history of book covers? Like, I don't know. This just doesn't have an AI look to it as far as I'm concerned. Right? So that's kind of a non-starter for me, I don't think. So again, Blood Ex Libris, published around the same time as Scott Harper's book. I would say it is very unlikely that AI could have generated that book cover at that time. And the book cover does look it doesn't have an AI look to it anyway. So I'm going to say no on that one. So we got John Skip and Craig Spector's The Light at the End. Okay, honestly, I don't know if that's AI generated or not. It is a subway tunnel with a light at the end. It could have been a stock footage photo. It could have been professionally done. It could have been AI generated. I have no reason to suspect it's AI generated. I have no way to disprove it's AI generated. It's a subway tunnel, right? I mean, the crux of the book takes place in subway tunnels in New York. It's a subway tunnel. Do I care? Right? There's nothing in this image that tells me that it's AI generated. Could it be? Yeah. It could have been. It could have also been hand done. It could have been a stock image. I have no idea. But nothing in this thing screams AI to me. So again, I don't know why people are jumping on the AI bandwagon for every little thing. So finally, we have my book, The Baby Eater, and I know for a fact this one was not AI generated because I worked with Chris Williams to make this cover. The Mononagal in the image is actually 3D modeled and rendered. I know because I did the rendering. I started the model. Chris took the model over and made her like really awesome. I did some touch-ups after that when I started to 3D print her. We rendered her. We did a AO rendering of it as well. And then Chris just did paint over after paint over after paint over of that black and white rendered image. The rest of the details in the background are all like stock images that he has pasted and tweaked and I mean it's hundreds of Photoshop layers, right? He did not just go make kick-ass book cover and spit it out. It was not going to work. He also did the original art with the Short Bites book. Again, Tik Balong is an actual 3D model that I rendered. I posed the Mononagal and Tik Balong together. I'm actually working on a 3D sculpt of the two of them fighting together. Then he took that into Photoshop and just, again, paint layers over paint layers over paint layers. So, crop some stock images in there, all that kind of thing. So, totally not AI. I will say, for Fear, Chris did use some AI elements. We were working on the book cover, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to just type in do book cover and it's going to come up. There are some elements that he AI generated, but the whole thing is edited in Photoshop. Again, I have the Photoshop files with layers after layers after layers. So there might be an image or an element that's AI generated, but the book cover itself was hand created in Photoshop by Chris, which that and so that's the only one that has any AI at all in it. So that brings a bigger question. At what point do you call it AI generated, right? Because like Photoshop has a generative fill, right? You take out an element and you're like, oh, hey, just clean this up, do sample the background, or, I want to remove the text. So just do a generative fill and say remove text or something like that. Does that count as AI at that point? If you've used a little bit of AI to manipulate. I mentioned this in a previous podcast where they were talking about AI in film, or, oh no, it's horrible, you should never use AI and everything like that. And then they were talking about the generative fill in Photoshop. I'm like, oh no, but that's great. That's fantastic. You can use that. It's fine to manipulate an image as long as you're not creating an image. But what if you have an element that's AI generated, but it's only one piece of the bigger puzzle? Where do we draw the line? Okay. So now, as a joke, I did create a book cover purely from AI. And this was meant to be a April Fool's joke that nobody got. I was getting like, oh, congratulations on the new book. I'm like, no, this should be obvious that is not a real book. Nobody bought it. Everybody bought it. Everybody like, oh, wow, how did you write so fast? That's so awesome. That looks awesome. I can't wait to listen to the audiobook. And I'm like, oh God. If you clicked on the link to buy the book, there was a big page that basically said, April Fools, now here are all my real books. Which nobody clicked on. That is an example of an AI-generated book cover. And again, it was meant as an April Fool's joke, so don't hang me. It's not going to ever be published. There will never be a book, Sharks on the Bus. Not written by me, anyway. So real quickly, let's talk a little bit about Reverb. Now, I've talked about this in the past. This is a place where you can put your book up online as a PDF. You can place a bid, and people will accept that bid to read your book. And then in order to get the money, they have to either leave a review or leave a book report. Why a book report? Because technically you cannot pay for reviews on Amazon. So they have an option to not leave a review and still get the money in order to be compliant. The book report is probably more work than the review is, so you usually get a review. I have not gotten a book report yet. Now, these are honest reviews. They tend to be friendly reviews, but they're not guaranteed. My book, The Baby Eater, which is my most award-winning book, actually got a couple of mediocre reviews from Book Reverb, and I was a little surprised. One of the problems I had with this is that they go up on Amazon as a non-verified review, which means you did not buy the book from Amazon. One author said that he tried something like that. He got so many unverified reviews that it got flagged as being suspicious. So I said, take it with a grain of salt. The reason I'm bringing Book Reverb back up again is because they now have audiobooks. So the way it works is you put your book up on the site, you upload your promo codes from Audible. which is why they give you the promo codes, so you can give them away to get ARC reviews. So this is compliant with the system. This is how it's supposed to work, right? That's why they give you the promo codes. So the only downside is you're paying somebody to download a free book to then give a review. Now, there's been other websites where I have posted my promo codes. I would pay like $12 to put up like 100 promo codes. And people would download it for free. And then maybe you'd get 4 or 5 reviews out of that. Because there's no promise of a review. So Book Reverb is definitely way more expensive, but I've already gotten like 10 good reviews out of the thing. So yeah, is it the most cost-effective way? No. Okay, it is a little pricey. The audiobooks actually charge, I think it's by the size of the book, because most of my books is a $10 fee. But one of the books is smaller and it's an $8 fee. So if you have like a Game of Thrones books, I'm wondering how big that thing is going to cost, right? It might be 15, I don't know. So it's a little bit expensive, but I'm getting some really good reviews out of the thing. And of course, the more reviews you get, the better the book looks, the more the algorithm picks it up. Give Book Reverb a try if you have some audiobooks. I'm enjoying it. I think it's working rather well. I like it better for audiobooks than I do for actual traditional books at this point. Just because, again, it's using ACX's own audiobook promo codes, which is why they give it to you in the first place. So let's get into this week's showcase. Now, I want to start by saying one of the things that I try to do with this showcase is show books across various genres. And sometimes I will get into a genre that's not really my flavor for various reasons. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad book. Look at Jennifer Milne's book, Plain Princess Jane. Fantastic book. Not my vibe, right? I'm not reading little girl princess fairy tales. Doesn't mean it's a bad book. Quite the opposite. We gave it Book of the Year. But as a 54-year-old man, I'm not jonesing for preteen fantasy books. It's just not what I'm into. So when I cover a book that is not in my flavor, it is a little bit of a challenge. Because I want to be fair, I want to be objective, but I'm also trying to showcase something that is not something I actually might enjoy for myself, because it's not my thing. And that's fine, right? Some people look at my horror books and are like, oh no, I don't want to read a book about something that eats babies. That's fine. That's why I put it right there on the cover. I don't want any surprises, right? It is literally the few times when you can judge the book by its cover. That is what it's about. It is about a monster that eats babies. You can see that on the cover and go, nope, not for me. That's fine. I'm fine with that. So with that said, I dove into, this showed up on my Instagram feed as being dark and messed up and everything like that. And I was like, let's give this a shot. And this was supposed to be very spicy. So I'm like, ooh, well, this could be fun. We haven't done a lot of spicy things. We used to have a spicy ban, because I used to do this with my teenage son, and then he got tired of doing it. So now I do it solo. I am still looking for a co-host if anybody's interested. But I did this. I picked this book because it was short, it was spicy, and it was something very, very different. It was supposed to be all messed up and everything like that. So I chose Feral MMMF by Mila Crawford. The tagline on this is that there's basically these 3 guys that are all obsessed with the same woman. Okay, sounds kind of interesting. Let's go with that. This was supposed to be a very dark romance kind of thing. And they actually even have a warning at the beginning of the book. You know, it has this kind of spicy stuff, this kind of spicy stuff, this kind of really kind of messed up spicy stuff. I mean, it's just the big list of, like, you know, red flags, you know. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to get a lot of spicy in this. This sounds interesting. Was not what I was expecting. And it's kind of both a good thing and a bad thing, which makes it really hard to kind of tell you how I feel about this book. Obviously, it's on the showcase, so I'm recommending it, right? We don't bring books onto the showcase to tear it apart and say how bad it was. So I was kind of on the fence, and I'll tell you why. Because the parts that are good are really good. And I'm not talking the spicy stuff. So the main character is an Iranian named Azadeh, whose family escaped Iran during the revolution, who has the scars where the morality police caught her because like an inch of hair was showing out of her garb, and so she was whipped publicly and called a whore and a slut. Yeah, I thought it was very strangely timely, considering that this main character is coming from a pre-revolutionary Iran, or actually from after the fall of Iran, to the current theocratic government that it has today. I think that brings a very interesting perspective, and there's a lot of discussion of what Iran was then versus what it is now. There's also a lot of discussion of a young girl from Iran who doesn't know the language and doesn't know the culture, trying to fit in here in America. I could have had a book of just that. Like, that part was awesome. The book is told non-linearly, all right? It's constantly jumping back and forth in time and between character perspective, which on the audiobook was not as chaotic as that sounds. Every chapter, it starts with, this is where we are in time. You know, it's 3 years ago, 5 years ago, modern day, whatever. And then this is the perspective that we are seeing this chapter from. And then each main character, the three guys and Azadeh, all have a separate voice actor. So on the audiobook, it was very clear whose perspective we were listening from and when in time it was listening from. It was not the least bit confusing. The parts of the book that I struggled with is, so just real quickly, we have basically three guys and a girl, and I was expecting all three guys to basically want to be with the girl, which they do. The part I wasn't really expecting based on the blurb was the three guys are also okay being with each other. Now again, I'm not making judgments. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my flavor. Okay? So that's where I was a little turned off with the book. And if anything would have put it on the do not read list for me, it would have been the male on male spicy bits. Okay? But there was so much interesting stuff going on without the spice that I kind of wanted to keep going. And so I kind of stomached through the parts that I didn't care for. And again, it wasn't that it was badly written. It's just not my cup of tea. Which again, is fine. We all have our genres of choice. We all have our flavors. Again, not a judgment thing, just a personal taste thing. That's fine. I will say the one spicy bit that I thought was very odd, and it kind of felt like she put it in there because it's like, man, I'm writing all this stuff and I haven't had any spice in it yet. So the main crux of the story is one of the three has betrayed her. And I don't want to get into who. You find that out in like chapter 1. It's not a big reveal that one of them has betrayed her. So Azadeh spends most of her days rescuing women from places like Iran and Afghanistan, places where she herself escaped from. And she has to come home because one of these three men has betrayed her. We find out that, well, I don't want to get into why. It turns out it hadn't meant to be a betrayal, but then it kind of escalated and it became a thing. And so now she's got to go rescue somebody. And then they go, okay, well, we need to have a stress reliever because you're all stressed because you're worried about this person we have to rescue. So let's bang it out of you. And I'm like, okay, now the scene itself was fine, right? It was a good scene. I liked it. That was the spicy bits that I kind of wanted in the first place. Again, we still had a little male on male that I could have done without. But again, personal taste, not bad writing. It just felt like a really weird time to do it. Like we could have had a flashback. We could have had, something else. It's just, if I had to go rescue my daughter from terrorists a la Taken, I don't think I'm going to be in the mood to bang. That's just my opinion. Okay? The part about the book that really that really put it on the fence for me, and it wasn't the male on male spicy bits. That didn't make it hard for me to read, but it wasn't what almost put it on the DNR. Or put it off the podcast. What put it off was there could have been so much more. This is a short book, and I kept checking to see if it's part of a series. Like, was I missing something? It does say it's like part of the Darkly Ever After, but also says it's a standalone. So maybe the reason why it felt like half a book is because it's part of a series. But I mean, there were so many, like there was all this detail put into Azadeh meeting Ezekiel in high school, and Ezekiel having a problem with his father, who was the local preacher, who wasn't a very good person. And then we sort of skip to when he meets Cyrus in juvie, and Azadeh's visiting them, and I'm like, why skip that part? Let's go into the incident that, I mean, and it explains what happened, but I don't want to explain. I want to see it. I want to feel it. Because it was a horrible experience for Ezekiel, and we sort of yada yada that part. And again, maybe it was yada yada because it's covered in another book. I don't know. But yeah, that made it a little bit difficult for me to read. But there was so much working for this book that I was into it. And the parts that were missing, hopefully they're in other books. Because, I mean, like, when was Ezekiel and Azadeh's first time together? When was Ezekiel and Cyrus's first time together? I didn't get that from this book. Hopefully they're in other books in the series. But I kept checking this thing. It kept saying it was a standalone. So I don't know. Hopefully it's in other books because there's so much more story there to be told. But what is told there is so good. I really was getting into the character of Azadeh. And all these people are messed up, right? They all have psychological drama that they're trying to heal from. And that colors their actions both in and out of the spicy bits. So if you're looking for some really dark, spicy stuff, if you're looking for just some really messed up people trying to get their heads on straight, try Feral MMMF. And let me know if you're a fan of this series. Let me know if the parts that were missing are in other books, if there's more to this story than just this book, or have you read the entire series and you feel the same way, that there was stuff missing? So yeah, I don't know. Let me know. So that's the showcase for this week. I will be at Monsterpalooza at the end of May. That is looking so far to be a bit of a recession buster. They're telling how the tickets are starting to sell out. Please. I know I talked about WonderCon. WonderCon was quite slow. The economy is really tough. And remember, wherever you are, when you're seeing gas prices, here in California, they're at least $2 a gallon more. I was driving around yesterday seeing gas prices easily passing $6 a gallon. So, I mean, it's just hard for people to travel when the cost of fuel is so high. And that makes the cost of everything else expensive, which means disposable income starts going away. So supporting your independent author is becoming more and more of a challenge. And for everyone who actually goes out and buys a book, thank you, because we're all in this together at this point, and support your local indie author. Now remember, if you're seeing a clip of me here on the TikToks or the Instagram, this is just a little clip of the podcast as a whole. We run it through a program called Opus Clip that cuts it for social media. If you are interested in anything you see on this little clip, come check out the full podcast. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube, Podbean. You can also support us here at the Indie Author Showcase by getting your official Indie Author Showcase merch. You can find that at shopspectralink.com. You can also order any of our books from shopspectralink.com. You can see me at the conventions. I will be at Monsterpalooza at the end of May. You can also join our Patreon at patreon.podbean.com/Indie Author Showcase. And then the easiest, cheapest way to support the podcast is just to like and subscribe. Let people know, I saw this podcast, I thought it was really interesting. Give it a go. Give it a check out. We have interviews, we have books that we showcase, and we talk about things going on affecting the lives of indie authors. So if you're an indie author like us, sign up. If you just want to support indie authors and you want to know what your next great read is going to be, follow the podcast. Until then, folks, keep on reading.